Welcome to the Well-Seasoned Librarian Podcast. This is Season 15, Episode 7, and I'm your host, Dean Jones. I'm returning this week after a long hiatus due to health issues, so I want to thank you for sticking with the podcast. Today we're speaking with renowned chef and restaurateur David Burke, who is celebrated for his innovative and artistic approach to cuisine. With a career spanning decades, he has earned numerous accolades, including a prestigious 3-star New York Times review. Overseeing a growing portfolio of restaurants worldwide, despite the challenges of COVID-19 pandemic, Burke remained resilient, launching new restaurants and initiatives such as the Feed the Heroes program. His commitment to culinary excellence, philanthropy, and community engagement has solidified his position as a leading figure in the global culinary scene. Beyond his culinary accomplishments, Burke is a multifaceted individual with interests in art, philanthropy, and education. He has authored cookbooks, designed cookware, and actively supports charitable causes. His dedication to nurturing young talent is evident through his establishment in the David Burke Scholarship at Brookdale Community College, and as he continues to expand his culinary empire, Burke remains a driving force in the industry, inspiring chefs and diners alike. We now take you to my conversation. Welcome to the Well-Seasoned Librarian Podcast. Today I'm speaking with Chef David Burke, who you might recognize from Iron Chef America, Top Chef Masters, and ABC TV, Forbes, Fox TV, Bloomberg News, and more. Chef David, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, my pleasure. How are you?
I'm doing great. Happy Halloween to you, sir.
Happy Halloween. Halloween becomes an a bigger adult holiday every year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I want to talk with you a little bit about your career. What are your early inspirations? What inspired you to pursue a career in culinary arts? Was there a particular chef or experience that sparked your passion?
Well, I started out in the 70s as working in a hotel and it's more like actually it was a motel in my hometown, and I was a dishwasher. And back in the 70s, being in the kitchen was quite different than today. Maybe not quite different, but it wasn't as expected as it is today. And it was still hard work. It was intense energy, camaraderie, gratification, fun. And I was washing dishes, I was 15, watching the older guys. And there was all guys in the kitchen back then. I don't think there was a woman. Maybe there were a few, but back then not many, at least in the places I worked. And it was kind of like a sport. So that's how I got into it. I kind of fell into the energy of it and the opportunities that it afforded for growth, because and also the looseness of not being in a suit and tie or not being at a desk at 9:00. Because in the chef world, if you mosey in or you go in early and you can produce, you often work later than you're supposed to, harder than you're supposed to, longer hours. So there's not this regimen of, why are you not here at 7 a.m.? Not that I like to sleep late. I was always been a hard worker. It was just, you came in and you had something to accomplish that day. It wasn't like 6 months from now, we'll see the results. It was like you saw the results that night, which is something I like. If I want to try, so that was part of the spark that got me interested.
I love that. You graduated from prestigious institutes like the Culinary Institute of America. How did your education prepare you for the demanding world of fine dining?
Well, I was lucky enough to get started early. And in high school, I got out of my senior year. I didn't have to go. So I got to work at a very good country club. I got lucky. First of all, I got lucky to get that job because I knocked on doors. My guidance counselor was also working with the CIA back then. We got me signed up because I was an athlete and I also had very strong grades. I had my credits. So I had to go to high school my last year, maybe 2 classes in the morning. Then I went to work full time as an adult. So I had a real job when I got to the CIA a year later, I was pretty confident. So I knew what a real kitchen was. I wasn't a high school kid going to college. I was a high school kid with 1 years of adult training going to a college. So I was a little more serious about it. But I knew the lingo, and I knew how to butcher, and I knew how to cook. And I
Oh,
also
wow.
worked in so I had, as a student, I was the one raising my hand when they said, who wants to bone out the salmon? Who wants to
Oh,
cut the
nice.
beef? So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I can do it. That kind of stuff. So it was helpful for me. So I really enjoyed school.
You have a very fine distinction of having won the Meilleurs Ouvriers de France Diplome d'honneur, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and probably not. What was that like?
That was pretty amazing. It was not easy. It's called the Meilleurs Ouvriers de France. It means best worker in France. And there's honorary diploma from an organization that's very hard to get to be certified. To have an MOF, which is what it stands is the initials in France, is very prestigious. They actually put MOF on their license plates. It can be done in most crafts, but the culinary and pastry crafts are pretty hard to do. Now, I got an honorary diploma. I didn't go through the 3 weeks of testing that they needed to do to be certified. It's like becoming a certified master of your craft. I was in Tokyo representing the United States in the Culinary Olympics. There was 15 countries, and the French decided they would bring the diploma as their trophy to whoever won, and I won their trophy or their honorary diploma. So it was pretty amazing. I was 26 years old, representing the U.S. We won a gold medal from the Japanese government for the overall skill and technique, and we won the Meilleurs. So it was great. It was a worthwhile trip in Japan, 1988. Yeah,
Wow.
so it was good. Yeah, so that was a catalyst also that got me a lot. It got me some press in New York, but I was already making headlines in New York. But it was kind of played down by the press because the French chefs in New York were like, "That's not possible. Like, they don't give that to foreign. You can't. You got to be a French citizen to get the MOF." But they didn't realize it was an honorary diploma. In fact, it's still very prestigious, but some of the press played it down because no one knew what it was,
Oh, yeah.
nor could they pronounce
Yeah.
it.
Now you've opened your list of restaurants is impressive, and you've opened restaurants across the US and even in Saudi Arabia. What's your approach to selecting locations and crafting menus that resonate with local preferences?
Well, it's a good question. What we do is we find out, for example, we find out where the geographic location is, the competition. We always try to do some pastry or so that represents it. Like I noticed there's a Golden Gate Bridge behind you. So when I
Yeah.
was a chef at the River Café, which was under the Brooklyn Bridge, we made a Brooklyn Bridge dessert out of chocolate because that tied into where you were sitting. And it's still on the menu, and it's been on the menu since 1988. And the owner won't let the chefs take it off. It's iconic, and it's also fun to say I sold the Brooklyn Bridge to somebody. So we try to do things like that. We made the George Washington Bridge at another restaurant that was right near that. So we look at, and there's something called Park Bench dessert we made. We had Park Avenue Cafe out of chocolate. So we try to work some kind of whimsical theme into certain things we do. We have a restaurant called The Goat. We have a chocolate cake with goat caramel, things like that. That's one thing. There's also trying to get some local ingredient that might fit into North Carolina. We might do some kind of barbecue pizza in our pizza place down there, or some things like that, but nothing outrageous. What we want to do is come into a community. If we come in and we don't want to be a little better, we want it to be a lot better. So if we go into a suburban town like I have in Jersey and we want to open a New York restaurant there. We might not charge New York prices, but you want to open the energy and the style of a New York place. So you don't want to come in and be pretty good and compete with the best. You want to be the best. And that when you set off standards like at the beginning, you might fall. Usually can almost hit it, and you might fall even if you drop to 20% because I move on to the next project. You're still above it. So you really got to shoot your expectations high. And sometimes, depending on the problem is with the restaurant business, the managers and the chefs, if they're not the right choices, and you put your business in their hands, it's not going to be the same. So training is one of our issues. Training, retention, and the buy-in. And because there's really not a lot of contracts in our business, and there's no pensions, and there's no 401ks, and this,
Yeah.
it's a tough business to keep people. There's not a lot of reason to stay unless you're coddling and paying well and giving freedoms, and everyone's looking for an easier, some, not everybody, people are looking for a different balance these days than they did when I was younger. We never even heard the word balance, a lifestyle. We were like, I'll work 7 days a week if I'm getting paid. I'll work
Yeah.
6 days a week if I'm getting accolades. Right. And the idea was to be successful at a young age and try to get your accolades, which led to the money. And I don't think people are as driven. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying the
Yeah.
way we did it was right. I'm just saying it's harder to find that type of determination.
Yeah, you are known, you're very well known for your innovations and inventions like pastrami salmon and dry aging steaks with pink Himalayan salt. How do you approach these recipe developments, and what role does experimentation play with your culinary craft?
Well, the examples you've given, a couple of them come from utilization. Pastrami salmon came from travel and utilization. I worked in Norway. I made gravlax a lot. I came back to New York City. I had lots of salmon bellies left over, and I'm thinking, how do you treat fish like meat? And the belly of a beef is a pastrami. So knowing how to make gravlax, I said, let's smoke the bellies and make pastrami salmon. It turned into a super hit. And not only that, it was things we were putting in the garbage that we turned into money. So economics play a role, travel, just pure creativity and trying to impress people is another one. Um, and sometimes by one thing leads to another. The dry aging salt came from me working on a diet product, and one thing leads to another. So experimentation. Uh, I mean, if you set out to work on a new salmon dish, that's a new salmon dish. But when you set out to create something from a byproduct, there's a better opportunity to create something. Because it's not been done. So you got to take chances, and you got to be clever, and you got to, you don't try once and give up. The pastrami salmon took us a long time, and then it finally got to the point where every smokehouse in America makes pastrami salmon. But I trademarked that in the '80s. And again, it's hard to patent food, but like you said, you get the credit, you move on to something else. The salt, dry aging meat and salt came through experimentation and trying to create a dry aged flavor with a flavor house, like a perfume that you could spray on an unaged steak, like a powder or a liquid, like a artificial flavor. And I was working with a food science on that, and one thing led to another, and we wound up coming up. We realized that dry aged meat picked up the flavor of anything in the walk-in that you aged it with. And the funny thing was, our meat, when we analyzed it, had the flavor of cardboard, and the cardboard was on the floor of the walk-in. So my idea was, if cardboard is going to be absorbed by the meat, maybe salt would, and voila, it worked. That we got a U.S. patent on. It still remains today.
Embrace the concept of cul- culinaryology, blending culinary arts and food science. Can you share an example of how culinaryology has influenced your restaurants or cooking philosophy?
Well, culinology is culinary arts with technology, and I mean it kind of, especially these days, if you look at sous vide and some other items that we use with the foaming and techniques. Most culinology, a lot of it's used in manufacturing food products. Research chefs. There's a company called RCA, Research Chefs Association, that deals with a lot of corporate chefs and flavor developers and things like that. But it's also used in everyday kitchens, sometimes without knowing we're doing it. But I've always been creative and curious to work with manufacturers as well as food scientists to kind of bridge the gap between the culinary cook, everyday person that is producing the final product, to work with the farmers and the fishermen and the and the food scientists and the manufacturers to get to the next level.
Now, this is the question I'm very eager to ask you about because this is something I'm really jazzed about. You were one of the competing chefs on Irish Chef America. What was it like to compete on this legendary program?
Well, that was tough. 20 years ago, I was on against Bobby Flay. I had two of my sous chefs with me. It was, listen, anytime you can compete on a national stage, it's worth it. We did a great job. I often joke about it because we did. It was lamb was our protein that we had that day, and we rocked. We really did a great job. Very ambitious food. So I often say, I beat Bobby Flay, but he won. The judges voted in his favor, but I thought we did a good job. But again, Bobby's a friend, and he did a good job too. Like I said, I don't get to see what he made. We were too busy. But it's always good to be on TV. For any of the chefs that listen, if you can compete, don't care what your age is, how good you are, if you're in fear, you got to go do it. Because it's, some people shy away from it because they think they might lose. Losing is still winning on national TV, as long as you do it decently, right? It's marketing. It has nothing to do with, nobody remembers who won. They remember the personality and the opportunity to impress people. I was on Iron Chef, Top Chef Masters, and I was competing against chefs that used to work for me. I trained them, and it was funny because that's the camaraderie part, and that's how hospitality. And I was a little, it was a couple of years back, and one of the contestants tried to beat me with my dish I taught him, and I'm like, "That's my dish." He goes, "Well, how else am I going to beat you?" So it was kind of funny. But I enjoy being on TV and competing because I think you have an opportunity to teach people, to show them what you do, and competition is part of why I love the business, because that rush, like I can't compete in a marathon. I'm too heavy. I can't compete in a swimming contest, but I can compete in the kitchen, and that's what I like.
For many food nerds like me, food television has created this culture where we're watching chefs a lot. We talk about chefs. You've appeared on shows like Top Chef Masters. How do you think television has impacted public perception of chefs in the restaurant industry?
Well, I think well the the food shows have given a lot of respect to the restaurant business and chefs. Um, Especially shows like The Bear, or when they see the amount of stress that goes into creating one dish or what you have to go through, right? That's one thing. Some of the other shows are, they call people chef on the street. It's kind of weird. I think the celebrity chef thing is a little bit overblown. I'm not saying I don't enjoy it. I mean, I'm a real chef. I'm a restaurant chef, which I call the guys that are in the trenches working. There's also entertainment chefs that are just TV chefs that really they're not in the hospitality business. They're in the entertainment business, and that's great too. And it doesn't mean they can't cook. They just cook at a different on a different stage. So I think that the respect that's come along with the television and the celebrity aspect. Listen, it leads to money. It leads to respect in the careers. It leads to opportunities. The downside of it is the young people getting into the food business that think they're going to be a celebrity and they don't want to put the work. There's nothing celebratory about working 60 hours a week for years and years and years and working nights, weekends, holidays, standing on your feet, and for usually low wages and with high turnover. So there's a downside to the expectation thinking it's glamorous. Because you spend a couple $100,000 in school, or 150 or 100, whatever it may be, and you get out and you're not making money like a lawyer makes. But you're paying for Ivy League prices. So you got to be careful. Make sure. If you're committed and enjoy the business and love it, then you're really, if you can find something you love to do and work, that's a lot better than that. Eases the burden mentally of what you do for a living. It's not really a job. It becomes a lifestyle. To me, I have a lifestyle. My lifestyle is in the restaurant business, wearing a white coat, cooking, getting up and working. I've never counted hours or days. I just do it. But that's a rare breed. And when you go into the restaurant business and you want 4th of July weekend off because your family has a house in the Hamptons, it's not happening.
Yeah.
Or it is happening, but that's not the way. That's not the path to being a servant. We're serving the public. So on New Year's Eve and on Thanksgiving and on Christmas, we work.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of it. Now, can you squeeze one of those days off here and there? Yeah, but most likely the idea is to understand that before you go into
it. Across your vast restaurant portfolio, which dishes are you most proud of?
That's a good question too. I have some signature dishes, lots of them actually, and some of them I don't make anymore because they're either too hard or they're dishes that I have to be in the kitchen to watch.
Yeah.
Because when you design a dish yourself, it's like your own painting or your
Yeah.
own song, and you want the lyrics to be right and the music to be right. And so when you do something called sea scallops Benedict that has quail eggs on it that have to be cooked to order and lobster foam, you really have to discipline the cooks not to take a shortcut. If you're going to really go out on a limb and make a creative dish, it's got to be great. It's got to be, and if it's, especially if it's angry lobster and the way I used to do it, and if it's not done great, then it looks silly, sloppy, and a mess. So you have to be able to be monitoring that type of dish. Pastrami salmon's easy because we can produce that and that's consistent. In fact, I invented the cake pop in the mid '90s, and we make those in my bakery. And those are consistent because they're made at a bakery. If I had to make cake pops in 15 different restaurants, they'd all be different.
Yeah.
They'd be different to a certain degree, the same as lobster dumplings. And we have the clothesline bacon, another signature dish. I'm really proud of that. It's not my favorite dish, but I'm proud of the ingenuity and creativity behind it. I created the sword chop, which was never done before, which is 2 chops from the neck of a fish. That was in the 90s. The pork shank, which won Best Dish in America in '96, which my partners begged me not to put on the menu. They begged me. They said, "Don't put on the menu; it'll never sell." It won Best Dish in America, USA Today.
I love that.
And that was a big hunk of pork, confit of pork, and underneath it was either John George or Danielle or Thomas Keller, number 2, 3, 4, 5. But number 1 was David Burke's crackling pork shank with firecracker applesauce. And that was just one of those things that I said, you know what? I'm glad I stuck to my guns. Because when you cook long enough and you have a vision and you have a gut feeling about one of my strengths is I know what Americans like to eat. And I don't cook for other chefs and I don't cook for my ego. I cook for the public. And I also add a spin to it and some presentation and all. I know what people want to see and eat because I'm an American. I mean, that's what I want to see. So I stuck to my guns. I had to argue with my partners to put it on the menu, and they said pork won't sell in New York. I said yes. So it was on the menu for 1995 and 1996. And it won Best Dish in America. It was on the menu at Maloney Porcelli for 30 years.
Wow.
If you can put a dish on the menu for 30 years, like the chocolate Brooklyn Bridge and the pork shank, we're doing something right, I think.
I think so too. I want to talk about something.
That was a proud dish, but there's other dishes also that come and go. I had a vegetarian cake I made, but you know what? Because of my creativity, I get bored. So what I think, what customers will say to me, "Hey, I went to your place 20 years ago. We used to have." I was like, "Oh, I forgot about that thing." You want to bring it back to, but you can't. You evolve, and also the cooks evolve, and some of the cooks we have now could not. It depends on the economics. If I can get $130 for a lobster appetizer, I can afford a better cook to make that appetizer if I'm doing 30 of them a night, right? So if I'm making $1,000 on one dish a night, I can pay a guy $25 an hour, 8 hours a day, just for that one dish almost, right? Because that's probably all he could do at service. So, the economics are interesting. Like pastry chefs, we pay a pastry chef, $75,000 or something. And then you count all the desserts and all the bread sold at the end of the week. And you realize that the amount of sales might not even cover what we pay them. So, but you have to have them, right?
Yeah.
And so then we say, well, we got to get you some. You got to do something else, or you better get in front of the waiters and tell them to sell more dessert. Because if they don't sell the dessert, the economics of keeping you doesn't last, right?
All right.
But having a pastry chef not every restaurant has a pastry chef. You need
Yeah.
to have volume to do that. And in the old days, when you had a prefix restaurant where everyone had desserts, so if I did 200 covers, I had 200 desserts, right?
Yeah.
200 desserts at a value of XYZ pays for the person. Now, a la carte restaurant, 15, 20, 25% of people have dessert. So now you do 200 covers and you only made 50 desserts at $15, right? At $750. We're paying a pastry chef $300 a day. So now your labor is XYZ. So we analyze things and try to, because you got to have great dessert, but at what cost?
Yeah. I'm eager to talk about something that you did that I thought was really spectacular. During the COVID quarantine, you launched the Feed the Heroes program, which prepared and delivered more than 100,000 meals to frontline workers and charities. Can we talk about this project and how it came about?
Well, I live on the Jersey Shore, on the Atlantic Highlands, on the Bay Shore, actually, and I have a couple restaurants down here, and I grew up in this area. We were working from home during the pandemic. We had been paid by our Saudi Arabia partners in advance of signing our deal, so we had some cash flow, and I kept my salaried people employed, even though our restaurants were somewhat closed or there wasn't people eating much. And we started helping feed people and the workers in the hospitals and all other people that were working overtime and anyone else that needed food. And we had a truck, and we called it Feed the Heroes, and we feeding people that were helping the community and with the panic, and we were and there were hospitals were full and they couldn't produce everything, so we went to
Yeah.
work. So kind of what we do. I mean, hospitality and hospitals similar. We do the similar thing. We nurture people. Food was medicine at one point, or was food wasn't looked at as was it looked at as a necessity, not necessarily a good time and a good night out at one time in the not so long past. But
Yeah.
now it's a luxury lifestyle thing to many people, not to everybody. So we were and chefs. We have workers and we have food. The one thing we didn't have was cash flow, because a lot of workers wouldn't work for free. But we had some cash flow. We had restaurants. We had refrigeration. A lot of our vendors donated food. They had warehouses full of food that some of it perishable, and so there's a lot of people that helped us help others. So there's a chain, and that's what's great about the food and the hospitality business too. When you want to, if you're in the trenches, go to a restaurant worker. They'll help you.
I want to ask you about you've cooked for many celebrities during your career. Do you have any anecdotes about any special times when you cooked for somebody that was famous and that was kind of an interesting or fun situation?
I cooked for Paul Newman one day, and
Oh, wow.
Clint Eastwood, but Paul Newman, I'm big fans of those guys. The older actors like that. I
Yeah.
cooked for rock stars and athletes and all that, and I cooked for Adam Duritz, who was a singer of the Counting Crows, and I had been listening to his music in the '90s. I guess in the early 2000s, I met him at the restaurant. And he became an investor, so he's a great guy.
Nice.
But when I met Paul Newman, I used to do this egg hors d'oeuvre I would give to customers. It was called it was a custard in one little eggshell. So I gave him one, and I walked up to him, and I don't bother celebrities usually. And I said, from the Cool Hand Luke movie, I said, if you eat 50 of those, I'll buy you dinner. And he got him and his wife laughed, and the people, and he stood up and started clapping, and the whole. And he said that was good. And he goes, I can't eat 50, but man, this is. And I just want to say, hi, nice to have you here. And he got to get. He stood up, and started clapping, and everyone else in the room started clapping, and it was cool. But it
I
was
love
just
that.
that, it was just quick-witted thinking. Um, and you know what? Most celebrity, if you're in New York or LA, whatever you see them, you see athletes, celebrities, newscasters, people that you admire. But what gets a chef most excited is cooking for another chef.
Yeah. Oh
That's
my
that's
God. Yeah.
That's the people we want to impress. The chefs that we look up to. So when that chef comes to your restaurant of a certain caliber, it's quite flattering.
Do you have any advice for young chefs who are just starting their careers?
Yes, I do. The best advice is to work for the best people and do not chase the money.
Yeah.
And try, even if you can afford to work for free to get your foot in the door, do it. Not everybody can, but do it. The education starts with the people you work for. Not the school is the school. Okay, the school opens your eyes and gets you excited, and gives you reference and gives you puts you on the right side of the highway to success. But they give you, it's like your driver's license, but you got to still learn how to drive on your own, and that means work for the best. That way you create the good habits early. Also, the networking amongst the great chefs is better than trying to knock on doors yourself. Don't be in a rush to be the quarterback, right? Learn all the
Yeah.
stations, play the field, and hone the craft, and ask questions and read. And the other thing is you got to eat out, and you got to for the young chefs in their own restaurants, sit in your dining room at a different table and eat, and see what the customer sees. Right, sit at a different angle. Sit by the corner table. Maybe there's a draft there. Maybe the seat's squeaky. Maybe the sun's not right. And always move around. And most chefs don't even sit down and eat in the restaurant. They eat in their office. Like go sit down like a human being and eat and have a glass of wine or a soda or whatever you drink, and eat like a customer, and see what the waiters do. Right, see how good they are. See how bad they are. Either way.
I like that. When you're not in the kitchen, what are you passionate about? Do you have any hobbies or interests that influence your work?
Well, yesterday at 7 in the morning, I was in my yard taking the honeycombs out of the bee things. So
Oh,
I'm
wow.
learning to be a beekeeper.
Very nice.
Well, it's not a full time job, but that was yesterday. I collect art. I like music. I travel, and I help design restaurants. I would love to blow glass. I used to do that slightly, but I don't have the time. And unless you're really good at something, you lose interest. I
Yeah.
don't golf. I don't have time for that. Although more importantly, I don't have time for a frustrating hobby like golf. I gotta. I'd rather sit on a dock and look at the water than golf, or walk on a pier or something.
Yeah.
We need to de-stress. I don't need more stress. Although the community and the camaraderie and communication on a golf course is probably good. So I'll drive the cart. Um, I like going to cities, small cities like Quebec or somewhere, and just spending a weekend. And I like cruises too. I work for Holland America. I jump on a couple cruises a year, and because I'm on the sea, and to change the pace. Food's good. They don't have to pack and unpack, and plus I get paid. But it's part of my. I happen to sit on a balcony. I like being on the water and pulling into a new city, and then going out and hitting an art gallery and a coffee shop, and I like all aspects of that have to do with what goes on the table, whether it's candle making, uh, honey, making beer, making things that pertain to what I do. Could be woodwork. Could be, like I said, something making a cutting board or design elements of a restaurant. Right now we're building a chef's table in one of our restaurants. It's in the lobby of a hotel, and we're gonna enclose it with giant Legos, but black and white.
I love that.
Because we don't need a construction permit, and if it doesn't work, there's no nails, no holes, no construction. We snap it together, the employees. We make it. It's like a kid's fort, and we'll
Hmm.
have a beautiful table in the middle of that, and you can still see over it, but it'll have the little knobs on the top, so it'll look like a castle. And that'll start next week. But again, I think the people with a sense of humor and a sense of artistic approach would be like, that's kind of cool. We're in a fancy hotel, and there's a table surrounded by plastic blocks of light. They're big blocks. They're like cinder block size. I
Yeah.
have them. I have them around my pool, and the reason I got those was during the pandemic. We had to separate the tables with plastic dividers and all that. And I hate putting holes in walls
Yeah.
when it comes to my restaurants, because you move a piece of art, you got a hole. And especially when it's stone or whatever. So I'm like, let's just do the Lego walls. So I bought the Lego walls, and we bought a bunch of stuffed animals and sat them on the Lego walls, and it was kind of fun, whimsical. And then I was like, you know what? I built a beautiful pool, and I'm like, I don't want to put a metal fence; it's going to get rusted, and I don't want to have. So we put the Lego wall around it, and it's what we've had tornadoes here, and Legos are stronger than a tree when they're snapped together correctly. So.
I love that. Chef Burke, do you have any upcoming projects or openings you want to talk about?
I have a project in Florida coming in North Palm Beach near Singer Island. That'll be ready in the April. I have a project in Jersey City in January and a project in Flemington, New Jersey in next summer. And working on a TV show on Eat This TV that we call Cooking with David Burke. And Lefto. Lefto is my puppet. I have a sous chef puppet. It's a miniature version of me who made headlines during the pandemic. And his main focus is to help me create leftover dishes after what I teach on my cooking show. Hello. And he's starting to steal the show. Hi. So we did a pilot, and his ratings were higher than mine. And he's a dummy. What does that have to say?
Chef Burke, I've really enjoyed getting a chance to talk to you. I really want to thank you for being on the podcast. It's been an honor to speak with you.
My pleasure. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
That's all the time we have left for on the program today. We'll have more episodes this week while I catch up after my long hiatus. Thank you for listening to my conversation with renowned chef David Burke. We'll have more links in the bio to his restaurants and more. Until next time, I'll see you at the library.